let's get ready. Get our game faces on here. All right. I think we are live. Hello, everybody. This is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. And, well, I got to mute my audio. I'm hearing myself talk. All right.
That might be me. Try now.
All right. Hello, guys. This is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. And I have a very special guest here with me today. Avi. Dr. Avi is here. And we're going to talk about all things coronavirus, COVID-19.
All right. What's up, buddy? My dudes and dudettes. You ready for some more COVID talks?
Man, I'm going to hang on 1 second. I'm hearing your audio playback somewhere else. And I must have an... Oh, here. I think I got it. Man, my bad. I had too many tabs open. All right, Avi, how's it going?
Oh, well, things are just, completely terrific over here in New York, as you may know. No, things are good. So we're going to talk about coronavirus today. I'm sure you've heard a lot of things. I noticed, Ryan, you wanted to talk to me because you've heard a lot of people saying all sorts of things about the coronavirus that you were concerned about.
I thought it'd be great to get a vegan doctor on, so you understand veganism and you understand what's happening right now in the world with all the misinformation going on about coronavirus. So I thought, we'd talk about, what information is should people be following, which is complete garbage, and what can people actually really do, if anything, to help the situation and to protect themselves and others. So sound like some good stuff to talk about?
Sure, right. Absolutely. So let's go through. So tell me, Ryan, what are some of the things that going on the misinformation? What are some of the things that was concerning to you that you've seen? It
goes all over the place. Like 5G is causing it. Bill Gates is trying to depopulate the earth. That's some of the more extreme left field stuff. But just a general skepticism about the truth of coronavirus being an actual virus that's actually something to be taken seriously. The people doubting that it's actually killing people. It's no worse than the flu. Stuff like that. So I thought maybe we could start off with that. How, is it like the flu? Should we just think of it as just maybe a flu on slight steroids, and we shouldn't shut down the economy or do anything differently?
Sure. So, we'll start with the 5G stuff. So okay. 5G is easy. 5G is non-ionizing radiation. You could look at an electromagnetic wavelength spectrum. 5G is a non-ionizing radiation. There's more energy in each photon of light from the visible spectrum because it has a higher frequency and a shorter wavelength than 5G. So you're actually more likely to have a negative adverse event from visible light in the amplitude and the frequency that it has from visible light than 5G. There's no data showing 5G. And also, not just that, but 5G wasn't mass implemented just recently during the time frame that the deaths happened. 5G didn't just get mass implemented mid-March. And then all of a sudden we see these spikes of deaths in New York City.
I've read some of these conspiracy theorists saying in Italy, they just built a 5G tower, and then lo and behold, days after that is when all these people got sick. Some kind of cause and effect claim.
Yeah. So the other thing with that is 5G, because it has a higher frequency, it doesn't actually reach that as far. If you ever notice you have a 5G phone, you actually need to get fairly close to the 5G signal, the 5G that
kind of like
hub.
It's like Wi-Fi
in order
kind
to get 5G.
You need to be close to the source.
Yeah. Yeah. So building one tower, especially for 5G, is not going to. it's not going to. I don't know when the tower was built. It certainly doesn't explain things in New York. Um, but even if it was, it wouldn't explain the widespread deaths you see everywhere. It's just that doesn't have that kind of reach, even. Not to mention that it doesn't have the wavelength required to ionize anything. So, yeah, it's nonsense. There's so many problems with it. So let's get to the more prevalent myths out there. So, the flu. At this point, early when we were talking about this, when I was comparing this to the flu, I heard initially there were some comparisons to the flu. Initially, I said, well, this is really, really a dumb thing to do, because the case fatality, what I said before was that the case fatality rate was higher than the flu, and the whole point is to stop it spreading. If we allow this to spread as much as the flu,
let's
far
stop
more
there.
people
Case fatality rate. What is that for people?
Sure. So case fatality rate is of the number of people who get the disease, of the number of people who are a case, how many of those people are going to die? As opposed to mortality rate. Mortality rate is if we just look at the total population, how many people died of COVID, versus if we look at the total population, how many people died of flu.
Can it be said that
the issue with
keep on a case fatality rate? Can it be looked upon on what makes COVID? I know you're probably going to get to it. That the way the deaths can spiral sort of out of control is if you look at two factors: case fatality rate and the number of people infected. Is that really a function of those two?
Yeah, case fatality rate and spread. Yeah, if the more lethal the virus is, and there's two things to look at: how lethal the virus is, and how much this virus is
let's
spreading.
Look at that compared to the flu, and then we'll compare it to something like, say, MERS or Ebola, and then we'll look at spread. Let's focus on those two elements.
Sure. So compared to the flu has an estimated case fatality rate of about 0.1% overall. The case fatality rate.
I'm sorry. Okay.
0.1%. So if you of all the people who get the flu, your estimated chance of death is 0.1%. If you group all the age groups together, those who are old, those who are young, if you just group them all together and do a rough average. The case fatality rate of COVID varies because it's an ongoing pandemic. You don't fully know what it's going to be until it's over. But the estimates vary from as low as around 0.6% to up to about 5%, 6%. Most of them are more around 2-3%. But in all estimates, the case fatality rate is far greater than the flu. And then and the rate of death increases. It's just nothing compared to the flu. Now, I just want to say, this was all before we had more data. Now that we had more data, it's clear. It's not even extrapolated anymore. If we look at the cities that are hit with COVID, it's not even a question. And I want to go through some of the data here, because right now it shouldn't even be a question of extrapolating. It's the data's there for some of these cities, especially New York, for example. If you look at, in fact, let's pull out this graph that goes.
Which one?
Let's see which one this is.
Which one does it have on it, and I'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's go weekly deaths in New York State.
Okay, let me get that weekly deaths in New York State. Okay, let's show this. We won't see our faces, but everyone will see the graph right now. All right, let's just check this out. Weekly deaths in New York State. And this data is from the National Center for Health Statistics Mortality Surveillance System and Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center.
Yeah. Let's pull the graph up. Is it up for everyone?
Yeah, let's see. It should be up. Yeah, I'm seeing it. Yeah.
All right, cool. So what we see here, you see how there's the flu deaths toward the bottom of the graph, the seasonal flu? And you have the different seasons, 2015,
yeah,
2016.
that's what all these colors are. They are the bottom guys. Each color, like purple, green, blue, yellow, those are the deaths for those respective years, as you see on the far right side of the chart.
Yeah, and you see this is the weekly deaths in New York State. So each point represents the weekly death count for the seasonal flu on the bottom, and then on the top you see this is all causes of death with the gray line. You see that gray line that's going
Yeah, that's
over?
all causes of
And
death.
this is in New York State. These are
Once you get heart disease and everything.
And then the red is the causes. Yeah, the red is the causes of death from
that
COVID-19.
is the vertical line that just stands out, like, you know, it completely stands out. And there's no other rational explanation that I could see that would explain this. First of all, compared to the flu, that red line is just you know, it's incomparable. And once you compare it to all causes of death, it goes beyond that too. I see there can be no rational explanation for this spike in COVID-19 deaths, then actually that COVID-19 is really happening right now in New York. How can it come from nothing and just go straight up like that?
Yeah, we could also let's also go to the other graph called deaths in New York City by month. So this is New York City.
Okay, let me pull that one up. Here we go. All right, deaths in New York City by month. And this is, again, using CDC data through April 10th. So what are we looking at here? What is this?
Yeah, so we're looking at through the years. You can see there's some variation year by year, but we look at the observed and expected deaths. So we take the average of all the deaths, and we say, okay, what are we observed? What are we expecting? What are we observing? And there's only really a few times where the observed deaths drastically went far ahead of the expected.
Yeah, see,
deaths.
September 11th.
One was 9/11.
That's the first spike on the left.
September 11th. So you would expect that's a mass casualty event. But then if you look over here, the only other time you've seen it is you haven't seen this in 9 years. Over 9 years. You haven't seen this in over 20, almost 20 years, 19 years. And then finally, almost 2 decades, you see this huge spike. And the question is, what explains this, if not COVID? And by the way, I'll just mention that not all of those deaths are even attributed to COVID. So we're probably undercounting deaths.
I see already people.
If you tally
keep going, Avi. Keep going.
Go ahead. If you look at the deaths that we have attributed to COVID, and you add that to the expected deaths, you're still about 2,000 deaths short of this. So the issue is people like to say that we're probably overestimating things. So some things they say is, if you look at the asymptomatic population, the case fatality rate is probably lower because a lot of people already got it and didn't have symptoms. That we may be overestimating this thing. The key also is you can't make that argument unless you also look at the amount of untested population that ended up dying and not getting tested.
I see.
So people in nursing homes who are just dropping dead.
I want to ask people in the comments who are skeptical. I see some ad hominem attacks against us. There's people are saying this is a joke. Do your own research, people. I mean, first of all, don't do an ad hominem attack, which means you're trying to attack us as people. This data exists independently. Avi and I could just not even exist on this planet, and the CDC would still be producing this chart here. So you can't attack us and try to discredit this data. Secondly, do your own research, people. This is a joke. No, this is actual real data. So if anyone has anything to debunk this data other than saying it's a joke, because that is not a logical response. So if you have anything rational to bring to discredit this data, please say so. I mean, this is CDC data. This is not just some guy that you went to high school on Facebook, making stuff up. All right, continue on, Avi. If you want to reply to anything I said there too, if not, continue on.
You aren't kidding. You're deep in it, Ryan. You're deep in the medical sophistry now. You've got. I don't know what kind of. I guess I'm not privy to your audience, but I don't know. I guess you weren't kidding when you said you've heard the conspiracy
people are
theorists.
complaining actual cause of death. Okay, let's just say we don't know what the actual causes of death are on this chart that we're looking at here. Let's say we don't know. What explains this spike?
And you know what? Did
everyone all of a sudden just get a
That's a
heart
great
attack this month? Did everyone just get in car accidents, but no one's really driving? Did they all fall off their bikes? And like, what explains this giant peak on the right? There's no rational explanation for this. If anyone could give me one, I remember I put a post like this, a graph like this on my Facebook recently, and someone said, "Oh, it's probably 5G." Well, you're just pulling stuff out of your butt there. I mean, you're just throwing crap on the wall to see what flies. But if anyone could explain this giant peak on the right, and again, let's be rational here. So what do you do? There's only two things they can do: attack the data, attack us, I guess, is another option, or make up some like bats or Bill Gates did it or something. So I want to see what people say. A rational explanation explain this giant spike on the right, and I'll take a peek here and see if anyone has anything to say. I don't see anything yet, so continue on, Avi.
Okay. It's a good segue. Cause of death. That's actually a good segue into the graph I made. Well, New York City average total deaths a day and NYC COVID deaths a day with those blue bars.
Oh, okay. I know which one you're talking about.
Pull that one up.
Yeah. The average deaths per day chart. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the one I posted to my Facebook, and got a lot of okay, I know I got it elsewhere. This one here. All right, so let's take a look at this chart here. It's the COVID daily deaths. It's deaths per day versus the top 15 causes of death. And this is for, is it for New York State or, oh no, this is the United States. United States, and the data, again, comes from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control.
Oh, right. I'm actually not sure what you're looking at right now. I was going to go for a New York City graph.
Wait.
The New York City graph I'm talking about.
Okay, Avi.
If you show me which graph you're talking about, we can go to that one too.
Let's see.
Right now, go ahead.
It should be up. It should be up on. Let's see. Hang on one second. It should be back up here. Hopefully I got the right one here. Okay. Do you see this one here? Hello?
Well, I can't see your screen. Ryan, I can't see your screen on this application. But the one I'm talking about is the one where it's a bar graph. There's blue bars.
Okay, let me
for New York City. I'll send it to you. You know what? I'll just send it to you right now on Twitter. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the key is, while I'm doing that, I'll just explain the argument. So the argument is that there's a class misattribution. So there's a misclassification bias that's happening. In other words, let's say someone gets a heart attack and tests positive for COVID-19. So they would say that what's happening here is the people are dying not of COVID, but they're actually dying with COVID. So it's not COVID that's killing those people. What's actually killing those people is something else, and it's just getting reported as if it's COVID, when really it shouldn't be. That's the basic argument.
Okay.
Now, a couple of things to say. First of all, that's not how reporting works. It doesn't get reported as a dichotomy. I just sent you the graph in Twitter, by the way, Twitter DMs. It's not a dichotomy. You report the proximal cause of deaths, and you can report contributory causes of death. So, for example, if you have a ruptured myocardium, you'd write a ruptured myocardium due to, and then there's a line to fill in as a result of myocardial infarction as a result of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So it's not that these things are dichotomous. It's not that it's either this or that. You can have a proximate cause of death, such as a CHF exacerbation, and your contributory cause of death can be an influenza infection, or it can be a COVID infection. It's not the case that we're just...
I was going to say, I have your chart up on the screen right now.
Oh, yeah. By the way, this is outdated. Those bars now, because of delays in reporting, are actually higher than they were before. They're actually in the 400s now, believe it or not. So the case is even stronger than I could have made it. But let's just go with this graph. So if we look at the average New York City average total deaths a day is about 150. For COVID, if you look at just the last week, they're already over 300. Really, they're over 400. The data got updated, and it's actually over 400 now. It's dipping. The averages. So even if every death in the last week was called COVID, even if every single death, even if the COVID negative patients died and were called COVID, which is not happening, by the way, even if everyone who died of a heart attack tested negative for COVID was called COVID, even if everyone who died from cancer.
Yeah, let's just give them the benefit of the argument. Let's just say what the skeptics are saying is wrong. Everyone who's dying right now, they're labeling it COVID, whether that's true or not. So that's how do you explain this chart? Why are so many people dying now in New York City when the average, it's like over twice as many people are dying right now when strangely there's a COVID-19 pandemic breaking out? Why is this happening?
Yeah, the point is, even if everyone got misclassified, which is not the way disease reporting works, but even if everyone got misclassified as COVID, it wouldn't explain even half of the deaths. You still have more than the other half to account for. You would only get to, and you may say, okay, what about seasonal variation? Seasonal variation, we already had a graph up for that. Seasonal variation in deaths doesn't make a dent. Even if you look at the highest peak of the seasonal variation of deaths in New York City, it still would not account. It wouldn't touch the toes of what we're seeing now. And so there's no case. There's no this idea that we're seeing the numbers we're seeing because we're just having a misclassification bias. It's just insane.
Yeah,
people are just repeating this. Yeah, this meme, and they haven't bothered until look at the numbers.
I got to ask the skeptics again. Let's say, just give you the benefit of the doubt that there's this misclassification of deaths occurring. Why all of a sudden, strangely, are all these people dying? Like way more than normal, more than twice as many normal. Normally it would be about 150 people per day, and now we're over 400. 150 is about the average. Now we're over 400. Strangely, right now, I mean, what is the rational explanation for why so many people are suddenly dying right now? There is no rational explanation other than the COVID-19 pandemic is really hitting certain places in the world hard right now. And yeah, New York is ahead of many other places in the United States. Hopefully other cities like say here in California, we saw what was happening in Italy and New York, knowing that they were a little bit ahead of us. We took certain precautions, and hopefully we flatten the curve and won't have such a crazy spike like that. But really, I'm just getting out, there is no rational explanation for these numbers. I mean, can you postulate one, Avi, or anyone in the comments?
It was 5G.
I've heard people say that. And let me for those of you that may have studied philosophy, there's a principle, goes back to medieval philosophy, Occam's razor, which says basically, if you have two competing theories, the one that's simpler, has the least philosophical baggage and woo-woo, tends to be the right one. And again, to look at what's happening in New York, deaths per day, the simplest reason is, yes, the sudden spike in deaths way above the daily average is attributed to COVID-19. I'm trying to be creative and try to think of some other secondary explanation. And I'm maybe someone could accuse me of lacking creativity, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. What other? So we've gone through that. There are what other? Before we get to that, what other have you heard any other nonsense that stands out from the skeptical side of this?
Let's see. Well, I've never heard any. When I show them data like this, what's happening in New York, there's no explanation other than, like I said, they'll just throw crap on the wall to see what sticks. Like 5G is doing it or something like that. So that, as far as this data goes, it's like crickets basically, because I think this is irrefutable. There's no explanation. Only thing they can do is question the data, just be completely skeptical, like what flat earthers do about NASA and so on and so forth. Extreme skepticism. But yeah, there's more just like kind of outlandish theories out there, like there's some Illuminati / Bill Gates trying to depopulate the earth, and they're going to inject us all with a microchip or something. Have you heard that one?
Does the microchip come in the coronavirus?
It's going to be the antibody. Somehow when the antibodies are produced, there will be some kind of electronic chip produced somehow, and we're all going to get injected with this C20 chip or something like that. Gotcha. And somehow this is a part of plan to depopulate the Earth. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to grasp some of these, extreme theories, because it's just there's not much to sink my kind of rational brain into.
Yikes. Well, I'll just say a few things about what's personally going on, what I've personally seen, and what's going on around with my colleagues. There are things happening in New York, especially, that I've never seen happen before. So we are, when I say we, I'm not referring to any institution specifically, but in New York and even New Jersey, the ICUs are actually expanding. They're expanding dramatically in the last month or so. So they've gone, I know one New Jersey institution that's gone from maybe 20-something, 30-something beds to 70, 80, 90 beds. Because what they've done is they've retrofitted. They've had to go to normal floors in the hospital that were normal. And they've had to retrofit those floors into new ICU beds because of just the sheer volume of ICU admissions and how many patients are getting ventilated and how many patients are getting ventilated who need critical care. This hasn't happened with the flu. We don't see the seasonal flu. I'm not talking about the 1918 flu. The seasonal flu, we have not seen. We just haven't seen this. We have not had a shortage of personal protective equipment in the country, where doctors are wearing masks for the whole day, the same mask, going in from one patient room to the next with the same mask and not changing your respirator. That's just, I have never seen that before. Everyone, you change your PPE. You put on your N95. You have someone who's on airborne precaution. Let's say there's a ventilator, a procedure or something so COVID-19 is droplet precaution, everyone. It's not airborne precaution, but in certain circumstances it is. That's where the droplets can get aerosolized. So in certain ventilator-associated procedures or in certain lung procedures, bronchoscopy, for example, that you can have airborne precautions. But regardless, you put on your N95 respirator, you go in, you see the patient, you do what you have to do, you walk out of the room, you put that, you toss it, you trash it. You're not going to bring those germs into another patient. That's not what's going on these days. What's going on is the doctor is going from one patient to the next with the same N95, the same respirator, the same mask. It's unheard of, and there are consequences of that. And we haven't had this with the flu. It's unseen before.
This relates to,
and so maybe
this relates to a question that someone just asked, and it relates to something we were talking about earlier. But someone, Chili, thanks for the super chat tip, wants you to respond to someone I've never heard of. He's an anti-Dr. Fauci scientist, I know there's such a thing, who claims COVID is a fraud and that the flu shares a similar case mortality rate.
Yeah, so case mortality rate is completely, by all metrics, the case mortality rate is far different. The flu case mortality is estimated to be about 0.1%. No estimation, even the lowest estimation I've seen, the lowest possible one was a recent study which was problematic from Germany, which was 0.3. Okay, something.
So even alone,
but no, even the
lowest is
at
least 3 times.
Estimate.
And what's the general accepted middle range? A non-radical, like 3 times. I'm sorry, more than 3 times, like 10 times, right?
More than 10 times. More than 10 times.
Okay,
yeah.
But we were talking about earlier, it's more than just the mortality, which is already higher than the flu by even the most conservative estimates. It's what we were talking about earlier, transmission. How much more easily is it to transmit COVID-19 than the flu? What I'm getting at is if you have a larger percentage of the population affected and infected by COVID-19, and the mortality rate is higher than the flu, this is why it's proclaimed a pandemic, right? Because of the easy transmittability.
That's right. So what makes it really easy to transmit, it's transmissible in these droplets like the fluids, but there's this asymptomatic period, which is about 5 days or so, but it has a range. It can be up to the 95th percentile duration is about 12.5 days, and there's even some cases beyond that. But even with 5 days on average, you can transmit it while you're asymptomatic. That's a
That
kicker
doesn't
here.
work like that in the flu,
And it
right? When
has
you
a
have the
pretty,
flu, you are knocked out. You don't have this long 2 week asymptomatic period where you're transmitting it unknowingly.
at least not to a strong
Mm-hmm.
degree. But with COVID, it seems to be like people are asymptomatic and they're just spreading it. So, and that's what we're seeing with the outcomes. It's consistent with the outcomes. We're seeing the outcomes have this, where they're just skyrocketing faster than the flu has ever been transmitted. And part of that is also because we don't have natural immunity to it. That's also what makes this a pandemic. With the flu, at least we have some amount of herd immunity. With this, not really. That's when this crossed over, people, we don't have any natural immunity to this, and so this is just going like crazy.
So that's hopefully we've
So
answered.
that would be the reason. I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know who the actual person is that the person in super chat wanted me to respond to. I don't know who the individual is, but that would be the short answer
Yeah, it
to that.
seems like, yeah, just to summarize, it does have a higher case mortality rate than the flu, at least 3 times, if not 10, perhaps 20 times. We don't know yet, but it's far more easily to transmit this. So it's just spreading to a larger percentage of the population. So just do the math. A higher percentage of the population that gets it, you're going to have more people, even if it's just like, 0.1%, or I'm sorry, 0.3%, it still that adds up to a lot of people. If say 40 to 50+% of the population gets it. And I kind of cut you off midway. You were talking about what you're seeing in what you're hearing about in New York. Have you treated any people that have COVID-19? What's your firsthand experience with it?
So some of my patients have had COVID-19. Without giving any personal information away, I've had a patient who, and again, I understand that this is not the complete norm for young people to get severely ill, but one of my patients had COVID-19 and really went downhill. And the patient was young. It wasn't someone who was old, and the patient didn't have pre-existing comorbidities either. There was a very, very clean medical history for this
Wow.
patient. The patient got the patient got sick, was put on
Oh,
hydroxychloroquine, by
wow.
the way, for everyone thinking this is going to be an amazing, was put early on hydroxychloroquine for everyone thinking this is going to be this amazing treatment, and is now and got worse and is now in critical condition. So, look, I mean, we don't know if hydroxychloroquine is going to end up panning out to be the miracle drug people say it is. It's probably not. I don't think it's. And if it does work, I don't think it's going to be a miracle drug. But what I can tell you is that just when I called the hospital, the patient actually called me from the hospital to talk to me before things really went down for him. And I could tell you in the background, the hospital sounded like a zoo. I'm not going to say which hospital it was, but that hospital, it sounded like everyone was swamped because they were. And it's hard to get records now. It was hard to get records before, but now it's just
Oh,
impossible. It's hard to
I have
Go ahead.
a skeptic on Facebook claiming he's going and looking at his hospitals. I don't think he's actually going in, but he's just kind of looking from the outside, saying it looks pretty calm and peaceful from my perspective. So he takes that to mean that this is all a government Illuminati conspiracy. What do you say to people who claim they're, and probably truthfully, they're really not seeing it in their backyard?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first of all, which hospital? Because not everyone's hit the hardest. Come to the hospitals that are hit the hardest, and you'll see it. But also, it's not. We don't take care of patients outside of the hospital. We don't take care of critically ill patients in the waiting room outside of the hospital. When you see how many patients are admitted and requiring treatment and requiring critical care, it's clear as day that this is nothing like what we're used to. It's clear when you see the ICU having to retrofit other floors just to make room, something that's never happened. It's clear. You can't look at how insane is that? You look at you think you're going to look at the outside of a hospital and see what's going on inside and see how many people are dying and how many and what the status is of the resources required, the burn rate of PPE, the ventilators required, the ICU care needed required, because I looked at the waiting room in a hospital. Are you
said
nuts?
He rode his bike by the hospital and thought it looked pretty, like, normal. But this is like a couple weeks ago, and it's on the West Coast in an affluent neighborhood. It hasn't, it's not really a hot spot here. I told him to go back and look in a few weeks and make a before and after, and actually go inside and look. Yeah, I knew the surveying the parking lot or whatever he was looking at is probably not the best data to make his to back up his theory on here.
It's baffling. It's completely baffling me. Like, we don't take care of patients in the parking lot.
I hope it doesn't ever get that
what
bad.
What does he think he's going to see?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. He's one of these people that thinks he sees through the lies of the government and media and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to see through the lies of him here. Just stuff like this is what I'm seeing. That's why I tell you right now, it's really hard for me to go on my Facebook. I just can't believe all the just all this stuff coming up, when there's so much data indicating that this is real, and it's just disheartening because we're not taking this seriously. What else are we going to be tricked by with misinformation and disbelief? Like climate change, as I was talking about earlier with you, that plays out in the scale of years, and it's easy to push that back and disbelieve it, but this is happening right now on the scale of real time, days, weeks, and people are still finding like ways to disbelieve this, just whatever they can satisfy themselves with, like driving by the parking lot at the hospital. Let me ask you this. I saw a super chat tip come in that was purporting that you can drink your own, or I guess assume someone else's urine to help you produce antibodies. Let's talk about what do we know based on actual evidence that we can do personally to protect ourselves and others? Because a lot of people aren't thinking that. They're thinking, oh, I'm young, I'm never going to get this. Well, what about your friends and family members, the ones that might have some of these pre-existing conditions? What can we do? What is real and what is not? What is this kind of like you see a lot of people talking about that's just kind of not really supported?
Yeah, so first of all, drinking your own urine is not going to produce antibodies to COVID-19. I'll just say that right now. Drinking your own urine will probably not produce antibodies to any infectious agent, such as like influenza or other coronaviruses. I don't recommend drinking your own urine in general. So no, you're not gonna do anyone any favors by doing that, including yourself. What you can do, there are certain steps you can take to minimize your chance of catching it, and minimize your chance of transmitting it to others if you do have it. So the most important thing you can do is social distancing. You stay away from other people, unless you have to. So that means minimizing your time congregating. Don't actually, I'll say, make a stronger statement. Don't congregate unnecessarily. Don't travel unnecessarily. Don't work from home to the greatest degree that you can. Wash your hands thoroughly, regularly.
Do you need to do that if you're staying home?
And when
do you need to wash your hands if you're just self-quarantine and not going out?
Yes, I would recommend you doing that anyway. But this is even more so. I would, well, not specifically for, maybe even if not specifically for COVID, but I would recommend doing it for other things. Anyway, so the other thing is, if you do have to go outside, so it's just, for example, you have to go shopping, I actually would at this point recommend, as the CDC does now, to wear a mask of some sort. I would wear a mask in public, and I would actually treat it as clothing, just like we don't go out naked. We don't go out without your clothing. At this point, I wouldn't go out without a mask. If you're going to a public place, wear a mask. And part of the CDC's reason for that is not just to protect yourself, is if you are asymptomatic, masks are effective. If you are religiously wearing them, masks are effective at protecting others from you.
Very important.
So that you don't spread it to other people. Yeah. Aside from that, those are the hardest, heaviest hitting things. Now I know what people are going to get into. They're going to say, well, what nutrition advice can I give? What supplements should I take? There's always, for everything, it doesn't matter what it is, there's always going to be some people asking what supplements to take, what nutrition. Just live a general healthy lifestyle is my advice to you. Get sleep, exercise at home to the best you can, eat a well-balanced, healthy, not to say that a vegan diet, I'm advocating the vegan diet on ethical grounds, but yes, I'm going to say eat a well-balanced, healthy vegan diet. This is not to imply that a vegan diet protects anyone from the coronavirus. Or any supplement. No, there's no, look, at this point, there has been no supplement that has been shown to provide protection for the novel coronavirus, nor has there been any particular diet that has been shown to protect anyone from the novel coronavirus, from SARS-CoV-2.
So you would tell this to, I was trying to discuss this with a Fruitarian friend of mine who is saying that he believes that he's 100% absolutely protected from getting coronavirus because of eating a raw diet. And what would you tell him?
Is this a mutual quote unquote friend that we have in common? Is it this person have a YouTube channel?
He actually does. He used to have a really long beard. That's all I'll say.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, all right. Well, I may or may not know the individual you're talking about, but no. So there's the Fruitarian. There's no evidence that the Fruitarian diet will protect anyone from SARS-CoV-2, and I'll just leave it at that.
I want to ask you a question. I saw our moderator, Ray Slever. I know he's been skeptical of COVID-19, and let me just address his question too. Let me scroll back up. Oh gosh, where'd it go? I think if I remember right, he was just saying that, here it is, there have been diseases with higher RO, how widely it gets transmitted, and higher death rates. So higher RO, higher death rate diseases. Why should we take this one any more seriously, since it doesn't score as high on those?
Yeah, so RO is R naught. That's your initial infection rate. That changes over time. What you're really going to look at is you're going to look at the data that's coming in, and the data that's coming in shows that this is actually, if you look at the deaths per day, first of all, I'll just say right now, if you look at the deaths per day globally, this is actually higher than tuberculosis, which is higher than any other single infectious agent. So tuberculosis kills 1.5 million people globally a year. That comes out to about 4,100 deaths per day. Right now, we've been consistently over 5,000 deaths per day, and certainly over 4,100 deaths per day, making SARS-CoV-2 right now the single most deadly infectious disease agent in terms of deaths per day at this time than any other single infectious agent, any other single infectious organism in the world. So if there's anything to take seriously, if there was any single infectious disease agent to take seriously, not even because of R naught, these metrics that you can use for proxies, you could try to model them, even without R naught, even without the CFR, look at the deaths per day that we're having. The deaths per day are higher than the average deaths per day for any other infectious agent. If that doesn't get you to take it seriously, I don't know what will.
Let me add to what you just said there. These death per day numbers reflect are affected by the mitigation efforts that people are doing all across the world. If we were not doing any of these mitigation efforts, what would these deaths per day look like? I mean, it'd be much more than 1.5 million in a year. Am I correct to assume that?
That's absolutely right. So keep in mind, when you're looking at, not only are the deaths per day astonishing, they're astonishing in spite of people locking down. They're astonishing in spite of all of these countries just taking all of these precautions. If we did nothing, we would be so ruined. You imagine what horror we would bring upon the world if we all had this mindset of playing this thing down.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, so just keep that in mind because you're saying right now on track, we're past like where tuberculosis is at, which kills 1.5 million a year. So we can expect a number kind of like that. Would you think if the current rates continue? Is that what by the end of this
Yeah.
year? Is that a decent guess?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if it'll be by the end of this year because we had a sharp. We haven't reached that rate until March, April. So maybe not by the end of this year. But
Mm-hmm.
if the rate continues as it look, if the deaths per day continue as they are now, yes, absolutely, we will surpass globally 1.5 million if this rate
Raise.
continues. If look mathematically, if any rate over 4,100 or so deaths a day continues, you will surpass 1.5 million in a year.
Race lever.
That's
Our
just how.
moderator asked another question. Actually, be a little more specific, Race, on the countries. He's saying some countries didn't lock down as we did, though, and did no worse.
Okay, so let's talk about. I'll talk
Okay.
about one. Let's talk about Sweden. So Sweden didn't lock down, and if you compare it to the other Nordic countries, Sweden has the highest mortality deaths per capita than all the other countries, than all the other countries that are Nordic. So you have to look at other countries that didn't lock down and compare it to similar other countries that didn't lock down. You can't compare vastly different countries. So of the countries, of the like a cluster of countries where they have similar culture, similar population, if so, for example, yeah, Sweden compared to other Nordic countries, it's clear their deaths per capita is far greater than any of the other Nordic countries, as you would expect. It's consistent.
What do you think of that, Race
The
lever?
United Kingdom,
Oh, keep going.
the United Kingdom didn't take it seriously until I forget exactly their timeline, but were they were pushing off locking things down, and now they're projected now that they're you could just look at their what are they at 700, 800, sometimes 900 deaths a
Wow.
day, depending on which
I'm
day
just
it is.
reading today
It's
sort of an experiment of sorts happening right here in the United States. Kentucky, Tennessee, they share a border. Kentucky locked down sooner. Tennessee delayed it as long as they could, and the outcomes are being reflected by that delayed response. And
I haven't looked at Kentucky
yeah, just
yet.
just
Have you
read
looked
that
at it?
today, and I also want to point out this is something that's pointed out, and the media. I try not to get my news from the media too often. I try to look at scientific sources, but it is often pointed out that South Korea, and the United States both reported their first cases on the very same day. Korea took a very aggressive approach, and we just kind of didn't until it was kind of too late. And they've had a better outcome. Have you seen? You know what I'm talking about there, Avi?
Yeah. So what? Yeah. What? So the thing is, so South Korea took some pretty drastic steps. They didn't just lock down the schools, close the schools. They had an app actually. They had I don't forget what it's called, something 100 meter, where they basically did widespread testing and they essentially had people register if they were COVID positive, and the government was able to track their cell phone, and people would get alerted. So you would get alerted on your phone if you were within 100 meters of someone else who tested positive in South Korea. And that's a very intrusive type of move that the government did that I don't know how many Americans would be comfortable with. But regardless, it seems to work. The other thing I'll point out is Asian cultures in general, their culture is much more, it's just a better culture for pandemics. I'll just say that right now. They have a very different culture than Western cultures do. They 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 will understand if you bow instead of shaking their hand. The mask wearing is more prevalent. It's considered a polite thing to do. And even if you look within New York City, if you break down the deaths by ethnicity, Asians actually have, it's not white people who have the lowest mortality rate. It's actually Asians who have the lowest mortality
Not
rate in New
aware of
York
that.
City from
Huh.
COVID-19. From COVID-19. Yeah. So there's a cultural factor there that they don't have the same culture as we do. They are much more. They tend to be more obedient to these kind of guidelines than Americans are. Americans tend to be more thick-headed and stubborn, and tend to think that they know more than the experts, and that they go conspiratorial and play down the dangers, and they'll do what they need to do. So we have a very different population. We have a very different culture. That's part of it. And then there's the policies. Some policies were different as well.
I want to get our
There's something
I was going to get our audience kind of ready, start thinking about some questions to ask Dr. Avi, because I want to get the Q&A portion happening. I'll let you continue there. And I have a question for you as well, but you can continue what you're saying there, but I'll feed you my question now. You could answer it all. I read that any day now online will be the COVID-19 antibody test, where we can see if we caught it in the past. Do you think that's going to be a game changer as far? I know we don't know how long antibodies last, how effective they are. Do you think that will help as far as bringing some kind of normalcy back, being able to go out and some people to go back to work? What do you think the result of the antibody test will be?
Yeah, I absolutely think it'll be helpful, particularly for healthcare workers. We do have antibody tests, those kind of serologies available now that are being done. I'm not sure what their turnaround time is, but they recently, I think one of the institutions released it in New York on April 7th. They started performing them. So one thing particularly would be healthcare workers. So if you have had COVID-19 and you have antibodies to that, it's very reassuring as a healthcare worker treating COVID patients that you're less at risk. And you're less at risk of bringing it back to your family as well. The same case could be may possibly be made for the general public, although I think right now priority is being given to individuals who have who are in the healthcare field or have certain necessary requirements for going to work in person. The other issue is durability of immunity. And the answer to that is I don't know. I think it's too early for that to say for certain how long immunity will last. With other coronaviruses that cause things like the common cold, we don't have a very durable immune response. So we're talking something around 6 months or so. I don't know if this is going to be longer than that, because it causes a greater immune response because of the degree of infection that we're seeing, the clinical significance of it. I'm not sure. I don't think anyone knows that. There are some reports that are starting to come out suggesting that immunity may wane from people who have recovered from COVID. I'm not sure if that's just turns out to be a false negative or not. So I don't know is the answer now, and I don't think anyone knows right now.
I'm curious to get the test, because I made a video a few days ago where I think I might have actually had caught it, a milder version of it back in late February, early March. Because at first the symptoms all we're hearing in the news was like like a fever, soreness, shortness of breath. I didn't have shortness of breath, but I had, and once I read that there's other symptoms like body aching and just extreme fatigue that would last for like over a week or two. And I'm going, okay, I'm wondering if I'm just kind of curious to see if I had it, and to see if I might be able to go out and buy food with a little more confidence than I do right now. Because I have a mother who's in her 80s. She has several of these pre-existing conditions, and I just don't want to visit her at all right now. I don't want to put her in any risk. So I'm really, as soon as I see that available, I'm going to try to go get that test. And I want to see if there's any questions here. I saw someone saying, if you're disagreeing with what we're saying here, instead of like, again, attacking us as people, ad hominem attacks, which are, often get people banned in our comments. Raise a specific question. I would say this is a forum, an intellectual forum, if you will, a rational forum. You can disagree with me, Avi, anything being talked about here, but bring us a rational question that we can answer. Bring a statement, bring some data, something you take to be fact, rather than just saying that we're bad or weird or something like that. I'm not quoting anyone. I'm just kind of okay.
I'm sure there's plenty in the comments here. Any particular questions standing out?
Let's see. Okay, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not sure if there's an answer. Steamy Ray Vaughn, do you know the sensitivity and specificity of the COVID-19 test? I'm not even sure what that means.
It depends. So it depends on which test it is. I've heard that the specificity of the original tests were low, around 66%, which is not impressive. But the new tests I've heard were better. So I'm not. The answer to that is I'm not completely sure. And we'll have to see. Hopefully, the newer tests I think are more accurate than the previous tests that were being used, which was I think a problem in the United States, which is why they didn't have so much widespread testing. But I'll have to take a further look into that. So sensitivity and specificity are just different metrics that relate to accuracy of a test. Sensitivity is basically how good of a test is to rule out the condition, and specificity is essentially how good of a test is to rule in a condition.
Donald,
we can get into there's.
Go ahead. That's what I think. Donald Anderson says, no question, but please a big thanks to Avi for his input. Just thought I'd give you that right now.
Oh, thanks. There's another common point that I wanted to touch on that skeptics make. One point is that the true case fatality rate is overestimated because of the untested population who's gotten the condition and didn't develop symptoms, who's gotten the infection and didn't develop symptoms. And so if you looked at the untested population and you tested them, you would get more people who were part of the cases but did not die. And so you're increasing the denominator, cases divided by deaths of cases divided by total cases. You would increase the denominator, and so the ratio would come out such that it would be a lower death rate. The response to that is any study doing that has to be accompanied by an analysis of how many deaths you're missing. Because if you're just going to do an analysis increasing the denominator without an accompanied analysis appropriately increasing the numerator, because you are missing deaths as well. There's nursing homes getting ravaged, and we're not testing the dead from the nursing homes. There's people who die before they can come to the emergency room. There's people who end up dying in the emergency room, and if they didn't get a test. Once you do an analysis, it has to account for those as well. And if you do that as well, then we can talk about what the case fatality rate is going to be. I want to see an increase in not just the denominator, but also the numerator.
I saw Raw Rebellion was asking, where are the scientific studies and stats that Avi spoke about? And there's really not much way in the as far as peer-reviewed scientific studies yet. They're just publishing some that are not even peer-reviewed just to get the information out there. But let's look at like this chart that we were looking at about weekly deaths in New York State. And very reputable. These are statistical sources again. National Center for Health Statistics, Mortality Surveillance System, Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. I've showed other graphs here where the data comes from the CDC. This is data that people can find out there. You know, it's out there. We're not making this stuff up.
No, we can post the links. I'll forward you links right now. This is not.
Yeah, we're not hiding anything here.
Yeah, this is not. Yeah, the information, the links we have is. We'll make the links publicly available.
And again, I want to emphasize the point.
So, for example,
this is not Avi's data. This is not my data. Like I said, we could both have never existed in this world, and this data would still exist. So you don't have to trust us. This data is independent of us.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up the link to the New York corona deaths, and I'll send it to you over.
If you can you paste it into the chat, the live chat?
Oh, can I paste in the live chat?
Avi's going to paste some of these links in here right now. So start looking.
Skype always just.
So it might take a sec here, but yeah, this data, we're not making this up. We're just reporting from using the best data sets that are available right now. And it. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, they're government sources, essentially. My computer is getting really slow because of the Skype. But I'll send you this in a message.
Okay, and if I'm kind of busy, Opera, I'll try to get the links pasted in the chat. If not, just wait till this live stream's over because I'm going to leave this stream up and I'm going to complete the show description with these links that Avi's sending me. So the data, you'll be able to see it if you can't find it on your own. Just you might not be able to see it at this very moment here. I saw a super chat tip question from Cold Poison. It's a really good question. Yeah, this is a great one. Avi, aside from being a carrier, can you list the top reasons why young people should be concerned with contracting COVID-19? And thanks for your work.
Sure. So, aside from being a carrier, and aside from the fact that young people, although it's rare for them to die, they can die. Even if you don't die if you're a young person, there is some evidence coming out that you may not be the same young person coming out of this disease if you do get it, if you do require hospitalization, which a lot of young people do. So there's concern that the virus scars the lungs, and people who have recovered from COVID don't actually have the same lung capacity coming out of it. So that may be a long-term consequence, especially because if it is scarring, scar tissue doesn't have a very high likelihood of unscarring. So pulmonary fibrosis, if you do have that, you may be affected long-term, even as a young person. There is some other data coming out from COVID infections indicating that there may be an alteration in the testosterone to luteinizing hormone ratio. Now, whether that'll end up affecting fertility in males will remain to be seen. But the point is that there may be certain morbidity metrics that may be concerning to you as a young individual, that even if the mortality metrics may not be as concerning.
I see, Jim. Yeah, I'm asking. Let people know. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people paste their questions several times because I encourage that because I'm not going to see it right off the bat. And Jib has been pasting this one for a while. Jib, the world is asking, and I think you and I talked about this a second earlier with a few of the graphs. Avi, he says, what is happening to other causes of death during this lockdown?
Yeah. So I imagine that some other causes of death will go down. So particularly accidents, driving accidents. I'm expecting, I'm not sure if this is going to pan out, but I'm expecting that the flu probably will also go down by the end of the year. You won't see such a crazy high. But I could be wrong about that because I think there's some people saying that a lot of what may be COVID cases were misattributed to the flu. So you may not actually see the flu cases go down. In fact, you may see the flu cases go up. Other than that, I think people with cardiovascular disease and cancer will either die at approximately the same rate, or if not greater rate. I don't think you're going to see a huge decrease if there is a decrease. Overall, mostly, I don't think it's going to be changed that much. Will the overall death rate, aside from COVID, because of COVID, the overall death rate will increase. So it's because of COVID, not because of other things.
Jethro Hendricks asks a skeptical question. In all caps, Jethro says, most deaths are being labeled COVID-19 and not even being tested for COVID-19. Don't be fooled.
Okay. So we've tried to ask our colleagues this, like, has anyone ever been pressured into calling something a COVID-19 death without a positive test? I don't know anyone. Now, maybe it exists. Maybe, look, no reporting happens immaculately and perfectly, and I'm sure this happens with the flu as well. I can tell you that there have been cases where someone has not tested positive for the flu, and I'm sure they've listed flu. Someone may have at some point listed flu as the cause of death. So if you're comparing COVID-19 to the flu, number one, that's not a symmetry breaker. Number two, if you think this is happening to a degree where it's a symmetry breaker, present an analysis if you're going to make that claim. Present the data. I can tell you that I don't know any of my colleagues who are calling things COVID-19 deaths without them actually testing positive for COVID-19. And my other colleagues nor can my other colleagues there, and they were very interested in knowing if you have any analysis. degree that we should be concerned that would change the actual data substantially.
And I'll ask our friend Jethro, who asked this question, if he's still skeptical, please explain this chart that Dr. Avi and I were looking at earlier, and it just shows deaths in New York City by month, and this is for roughly the past 19-20 years, and we're on the far right here. As you see, there's no precedent for having a giant spike in deaths over in modern recorded history here. So what is happening right now to explain that far right hand side of the graph? So say doctors are, let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. Say people are dying from other diseases and they're being mislabeled as COVID-19. Okay, let's say that's happening. I'm not saying it is, but let's just say that is. Still, how do you explain the abnormally large surge in deaths right now? Again, let's use Occam's razor. The most rational, least baggaged explanation is that COVID-19 is killing these people, not people dying from other causes of death and doctors erroneously mislabeling them. Let's see.
That's exactly right.
I saw a question earlier I wanted to ask. He pasted it several times. Here it is, the good guy. Should I wear a mask when I'm going outside? Like if I want to go ride a bike or take a walk, do I need to wear a mask? I find it does limit my breathing a bit. I'll just jump in with my answer and let's see if Dr. Avi thinks I'm being foolhardy or not. When I go running, I don't wear a mask because of breathing issues, but I don't run on the sidewalk. I run in the street. So I get more than 6 feet minimum from people. I'm like 10, 20 people. I'm crisscrossing the street. If I see humans or people getting in and out of their cars, I'm crossing the street. I'll stop if I have to maintain a huge distance. But yeah, if I were going to go walking, I'd probably wear a mask. Or go shopping, I'd wear a mask. What do you think, Dr. Avi?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Is my video frozen, by the way? Because I don't see my
it just
video
moved a tiny bit. It's catching up now.
Okay. I think we're back. Yeah. I think for the most part that's fine. So the concern is that the droplets can. Again, indoors, the droplets can last for about 3 hours. In the outdoor situation, I'm not sure how long they can last. But yes, if you're maintaining a social distance far from other people, and you're really, really strict about that, it's probably fine. I would still keep a mask in your pocket just in case you need to put one on, in case you need to be in a situation where you'll be closer to other people. So even if you're going to be really, really rigorous about not putting a mask on, about staying away from other people when you're jogging, at least just have one in your pocket just in case you end up being in a situation that you didn't anticipate that would require you to be closer than you previously thought. How about
just going out for a walk when you might pass people on the sidewalks and stuff? A mask then for sure?
Wear a mask.
Okay, that's how I've been kind of operating. Okay, good to know that I've been doing it probably a thoughtful way. Okay, a lot of questions coming in for you, Avi. Can you see the chat? I'll let you pick some out if you'd like to, rather than me moderating them.
Oh, I don't have the Skype is taking a lot of bandwidth on a lot of RAM on my computer up.
Okay,
the best one, but yes, you can.
Okay, let's see. Here's one we haven't seen, a person we haven't seen yet. Jay, this might be, I see China in here. Let's see. Question for Avi. What are your thoughts on how it's speculated that China has suppressed a lot of the data, the number of deaths, infections? Yeah, this is not conspiracy at all. This seems like a reasonable assumption, perhaps. What do you think, Dr. Avi?
Yeah. No, I'm not. No, I agree. I don't really buy the numbers from China. I don't think that they've gone through this with the amounts of death that they say they have, and I don't think that. Yeah, no. The answer is I agree. In fact, there's some intelligence reports from the U.S. government that's been coming out saying that they may have newsflash, they may have not been so honest about their numbers. But irrespective of that, there are other countries that are not China that have imposed these strict measures that have reached a plateau and that have dealt with this at a reasonable amount of mortality. And there's no reason for us not to trust their numbers.
Yes.
So South Korea, for example, that we talked about already, they're definitely not China.
Have any vegans had COVID? Any that you're aware of, Dr. Avi? I'm not.
Not personally, but I'm sure there are. I'm sure vegans have had
Yeah, I'm
COVID.
pretty. Yeah. Personally, I agree with you. I don't know any personally, but just statistically, it'd be really unlikely if not no vegans had it. Steamy asks, what percentage of patients progress the ARDS? What is that? Is that the advanced respiratory distress system?
So adult
Syndrome.
respiratory distress syndrome. What I'll tell you, I don't know the exact percentage that progressed to ARDS. What I will tell you is that the ARDS, what's being seen is it's not even a typical ARDS. So in typical ARDS, like you would see the problem with hypoxia. But patients with COVID-19, hypoxia means like a loss of oxygen. Patients with COVID-19, they're starting to go downhill without even hypoxia. It's not a very typical ARDS. There's this kind of sort of cytokine storm that happens where the body's immune system reacts to the virus, which causes things like these little clots in the blood, these microthrombi that cause end organ damage. And it also, they can develop cardiomyopathies from the cytokine storm itself. And so what's happening in these patients is they're using anticoagulation. They're also using, in some ICUs, they're using medications that actually inhibit parts of the immune system, ironically, for this virus, because it's the immune system at that stage that's actually causing the damage. It's not even the virus at that point that's causing the damage. It's the immune system's reaction to it that damages the surrounding organs, including the lungs, including the heart. And so specifically, the cytokine that stands out is interleukin-6. So there's some interleukin-6 inhibitors that are being used in these patients. Now, how effective that is or not, I'm not sure. But what I can definitely tell you is that from all my colleagues treating these patients, they note that the ARDS is very atypical. It's not like this classic ARDS. So it's very hard to compare a percentage of these patients that go into ARDS to others because the condition itself is actually very different.
Joshua asked a question. He asked it several times. I think this might be something that you'd have to speculate on, but try your best here. Would secondhand vapor from vaping spread the virus?
It can. Sure. My speculative answer is it could. I don't know how likely, but yeah, I mean, it spreads in water droplets.
I'm thinking about that Seattle choir we've probably heard about, where a lot of them got together, and a few weeks later, a lot of them were affected. A few died, and they didn't really contact each other, but they were singing the whole time. Putting their air out into the room, spread amongst them. So yeah,
beautiful, lovely.
Let's see. I saw someone ask a second ago, what do you think about, I forgot the exact question, but that this lockdown is worse than COVID-19 itself? Okay,
so lockdown worse than COVID-19 itself, it depends on what metric they're using to make that claim. If they're using mortality, if someone wants to say that the economic consequences will cause more deaths than the virus itself because of a Great Depression, that's very contentious. In fact, one of the graphs I sent.
Should I put that up?
The publication for this is called.
I know. Yeah, we haven't used that one yet, and we'll go take the one about life expectancy, unemployment. That one. Okay, let's talk about that one right now. Okay.
So, during the Great Depression, the life expectancy actually increased. It didn't decrease. So for those people saying that if we go into a depression, it will actually cause more deaths, it's not clear that that would happen. Historically, it hasn't. Historically, the Great Depression even hasn't shown us an increase in mortality, in all-cause mortality. Now, I know what some people are going to say. They're going to say, by the way, for those who want the source in this, the paper is called Life and Death in the Great Depression, and we'll have that linked as well. What people are going to say is, they're going to say that, well, it's the reason that mortality decreased at that time was because people ate cheaper foods, and the cheaper foods that people ate, because they had less money, they also ate less food, so they were calorically restricting, and that's why they were living longer. First of all, that's speculative, but second of all, we have some reason to believe that although despite the fast food industry and despite the candies and everything, if we have a shift of people eating cheaper food, we still might have some reason for people to believe that people may actually have been eating even less healthy food that's cheap in the Great Depression than now. One example will be the amount of hydrogenated oil there was back then compared to there was now. We'd have a ban on hydrogenated oil and trans fats. We have a ban on industrial trans fats in foods. We didn't have one back then. In fact, one of the things, butter was in short supply, and they started incorporating margarine instead. Now, I'm not a fan of butter, and neither are you. But as bad as butter is, eating a bunch of trans fat, I would say, is worse. So we may have some reason to believe that that theory doesn't actually pan out. So all I'm saying is that if you're talking about a mortality metric, it's not clear that the mortality is going to increase in the economic because of the economic depression. Now, if we're talking about other things, that gets complicated. Well, how much money are you going to place on a life? What kind of ratio are you going to balance out there? Well, are we going to ask the old people in this country to start taking a hit because we want the economy to turn on? Look, there's no easy solution to this. But the other thing you need to consider here is if you just let this virus go like wildfire, you're not going to have the best economy either. It's not like, wow, the economy is going to make this huge recovery and then this virus is just going to go spreading and these two things are not going to affect each other. The virus will have an effect on the economy, especially if you let it spread like wildfire. So just because of the cost of life and the cost of the economy, it makes sense to do it you don't want to do it excessively to the point where you wreck the economy if you don't have to, but there are really mitigation to impose policies here. It's not unreasonable. In fact, it would be crazy not to.
Yeah, Wujeta asked a question. I think we kind of touched about some of these issues lightly. Can you ask Avi if he knows anything about our progress on treatment and or medical preventative measures?
So the medical preventative measures, aside from the increase in personal protective equipment, have been mostly the same advice with the exception of the CDC's new recommendation that public wear masks. For the treatment, we need trials. We still don't know more than we know. We don't know if hydroxychloroquine is going to pan out. We don't know if remdesivir is going to pan out. We don't know if these medications are going to end up turning into game changers for COVID-19. I am skeptical that they will because that's just my clinical experience. I've had patients on these treatments and I've seen them get worse. Others have had these patients on these treatments and I've seen them get better. What's more likely? To what degree is it? We don't know, and we need good, well-performed, randomized controlled trials, which are being done right now. And so we'll have to see what those outcomes are in order to be able to have better light on it.
And again, we're going to have to speculate here, and an estimate of when this lockdown will end.
Yeah, so here's the thing, couple things about that. So I actually don't consider this a proper lockdown. A proper lockdown for me would be what other countries have done that have drastically reduced the number of cases. We're seeing a reduction in New York, but it is a slow climb down. In a proper lockdown, you want it to tank down. So we're still allowing travel interstate. Now there are some states that are trying to put restrictions on that, but there's no federal regulation preventing interstate travel. I can get into a car and I can go to another state. Anyone looking at New York, that shouldn't be the case. People here in New York flooding into other states, that's just a scary notion to handle. So I don't even think what we're doing now is a proper lockdown. Ideally, if you really do a hammer, there's this hammer and dance that you do. If you really do the hammer to lockdown, you'll be able to start withdrawing some of the restrictions, maybe in either 1 month, 2 months. But I don't think it's going to be that long. If you do a half measure, if you do this measure that's incomplete, where you have a week lockdown, The concern is that you're going to end up doing this lockdown for a much longer period of time because the cases are going to drop much slower. And so you're going to have this much more prolonged decline till you get to some pre-specified threshold of your hospital surge capacity that they can deal with, where you would ever think of restricting these lockdown measures.
I'm going to follow up on
So it depends on
follow up on that question. So you think what we're calling a lockdown right now? I know you don't define it as a proper lockdown, but what we're doing right now, at least here in the United States, you think that will go on maybe 2 months? It's something in that ballpark. Is that agreed? And then after that, what will life look like? When will we be able to go to sporting events and hang out in public? Will there need to be a vaccine, herd immunity, all this stuff? What do you think kind of the end game is, or is there one?
Yeah. So after the hammer, there's this period called the dance. So the hammer is basically there's a good article written about the hammer and the dance. We can even link to that. After the hammer, there's a period where you selectively remove restrictions, and you'll see the cases go up. Some people call that the second wave. And you'll see that it kind of undulate as the second wave will come, and then you put restrictions back, and then the cases will go down. The whole point of that dance is to not overwhelm the hospital, same as before. The end game is either herd immunity or a vaccine or some form of treatment that is effective. After the lockdown, I don't want anyone thinking their life is going to go back to normal in the near future. Your life will go back to normal. Just no way in the near future after those few months that people are going to go back to doing everything that they could do. People are going to, and even if it was the case, people wouldn't want to do it. They're going to be far more cautious. I think people are going to remember this, and people are going to their attitudes are going to change. People are going to be more cautious about traveling, congregating. I think life will look different for at least around maybe 6 months. At least 6 months, I think life will look very different than what you're used to. Maybe even longer. I don't know.
So do you think...
But that's my
speculation. Do you think once a vaccine, assuming they can develop an effective, safe vaccine in that 12 to 18-month period, do you believe that's something that we will all probably have to have, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, no, I think we should, and we're going to have a big problem with the anti-vaxxers then, for those who are the anti-vax community. Yeah, so, if a vaccine that's effective and safe will be a game changer, absolutely. And I think we should everyone medically indicated to get it.
Then, and only then, will we be able to go back to life pre-COVID-19?
Well, not necessarily. We could eventually just hit a herd immunity, for which it becomes there's no real threat of an exponential growth once restrictions are removed. It becomes just more like a seasonal kind of thing if it's still with us.
Okay, this is not exactly a medical question, but what are your thoughts? I'm very into the idea of universal basic income to alleviate some of the problems related to the economic problems people are facing. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've right now I think I'm generally in favor of universal basic income. I thought you were talking about universal
UBI,
healthcare.
yes.
I haven't done a universal basic income. I'm not. Okay, so right now we're doing something like that. We're with the economic stimulus package. So it's not. This is obviously not UBI. This is sort of like, you can think of it as a semi-temporary UBI. How good of it is, how much of it is just a Band-Aid. Right now, because no one is working because of this, what the government in the United States is doing, you're going to get, and I think they're doing this pretty soon, you're getting $1,200 as the coronavirus check if you make between $75,000 up to $75,000 a year, and then from that on until $99,000 a year if you're single, it'll slowly taper down, and from 75 to 99, and if you make over 99,000 a year, you won't get any of this coronavirus check, and you get $500 for each kid you have as well. So right now, I think we actually are doing something like this, and so especially at a time like this, I think you need some sort of plan for the people who are forced not to work, and what do you do to your populace? It's not because they're look, it's not because they are doing a bad job. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because
No
it's because they can't work.
Yeah, I was for it before COVID-19, and COVID-19 has exposed some of the major flaws in our economy, and I think it would be extremely helpful. Let me give you this other question. I've seen a few people ask it, and it came in from a super chat tip person too. I know you're probably not, you don't consider yourself a virologist, but let's try your best on this. Can a vaccine combat mutated versions of COVID? Because viruses mutate, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I read that compared to other viruses, right, COVID-19 mutates a bit more slowly.
Well, it's not going through the rapid shifts that influenza does. Part of the reason why there's a new vaccine needed for influenza is because there's a widespread shift in its arrangement of its genetic material. And because it does that, the immunity is just not the same from vaccine year to vaccine year. There's no real evidence so far that COVID does this type of radical shift. But yes, there could always be a mutated form of it that we may not have immunity to. It's certainly possible. I haven't seen evidence that has actually happened. So it's certainly, I think a vaccine will certainly be a lot more helpful and will certainly be very helpful. I'll leave it at that. There may be other reasons why it may be less helpful, durability of immunity, etc. That remains to be seen. But we don't see that type of crazy degree of shifting of the genetic material that influenza does, that COVID does.
And I saw a few people wanted me to mention, as I did in one of my previous videos about COVID-19, that Keegan from, the producer of What the Health, Cowspiracy, was strangely making a video about pandemics and animal agriculture, and this whole thing broke out, and that should be out later this year. So I just want to give that a plug, because someone did mention that in the comments and wanted me to let people know that in case they weren't aware of this. Cold Poison has a super chat tip question. Do we have any data showing the fatality rate of COVID-19 for those who don't have underlying health issues? Old folks without it think they're safe. And I saw several other people ask the same question. I was going to get to it as well. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, we actually do. So there's data from Finland, North Ireland. Sorry, I don't know if it's Finland. I'll pull up the report. There's a ICNRAC COVID-19 report, and it shows that of the people who don't have pre-existing conditions who are requiring intensive care, they're actually twice as likely, at least twice as likely, to die from COVID-19 than from influenza. So the characteristics, this is let's see where this data is from. It's the ICNARC report on COVID-19 in critical care. This data is, let's see where it's from. It's Europe. It's European data. I don't believe this is data in the United States. And basically, what they're finding, and we'll post this. The characteristics of critically ill with COVID-19, they did include people who did not have pre-existing medical conditions. And if you look at one of these tables, I think it's table 3. If you look at patients who with viral pneumonia, such as influenza, who pass away, it's about twice as much for COVID-19 that it is for influenza of the patients who do not have pre-existing medical conditions. So I'll post this your way. There is data. So the answer to the question is yes, there is data on that, and yes, there is data that even among people who don't have pre-existing conditions, that it is in fact worse. COVID-19 is in fact worse.
I saw a race lever, again, our moderator, who's a skeptic, is see if we can answer his question. This comes from
just real quick before we answer, just real quick, Ryan. So the data was NHS. It was from England, Wales, and North Ireland where that data came from.
Okay, so you guys can look that up if you want to get more specific info on that. Just Google that, and we'll put that in the show notes after this concludes. So Race Lever says that quotes from statistician Witkowski. Quote, if there is a second wave, I've heard this before, if there's a second wave, it's because the shutdown was preventing herd immunity to build.
Okay, so a couple of things with that. So look, if the answer is yeah, if you, with respect to a standard of a strategy of having everyone get COVID-19 at once, sure, yeah, people are going to get herd immunity. The problem with that is that far more people will die than if we even had a second wave or a third wave or a fourth wave. The problem with everyone getting it and getting herd immunity at once is that when you do that, you're surpassing surge capacity of our hospital system.
Tenfold.
If you do that, the case fatality rate goes up. The case fatality rate is not set in stone. It depends on a lot of factors. One of the factors is where in terms of the surge capacity are you? So no, you don't. So that, even if that's true, it's something you don't want to do. You would much rather have the second wave than have everyone get herd immunity.
I agree. That statistician is absolutely 100% right, but it's not a good thing he's pointing out here as far as how many people will die. Because as we pointed out, right now we're on par with tuberculosis, 1.5 million people annually. And if we had a do-nothing approach, that number would amplify, 10, 20 times? I'm not sure, but it would be a lot more than what we're currently on track with. So yeah, the guy's right, the statistician is right, but let's talk about the consequences if that were to play out. Okay. Let's see. Wujeta. Yep, you guessed my headphones correctly there. Here's a good question here. This is kind of follow up on the end game I was talking about. After a vaccine is proven effective, how long will it take for it to be widely distributed enough for us to resume normal life, like sporting events and all that? Because there's a lot of people on this planet.
Yeah. The answer is, again, I don't know. It depends on a lot of factors. I don't think it will take that long if we do have a vaccine that's proven to be safe.
I can imagine a lot of companies will be pumping that out. Really? I mean, they're not going to delay.
Yes. Now, the only wrinkle I'll throw that into is if we have some anti-vaxxers trying to push back and not vaccinate as they do with everything else. That may slow down things, the process, because they'll have their little congregations where they don't have herd immunity. So, well, that's the next battle we'll have to fight. Hopefully they'll make an exception for this. But yeah, hopefully they're not in too great of a number, and so the rest of us can make rational decisions.
I'm gonna have to speculate here, Dr. Avi. What's your best guess of the probability that there will indeed at some point be a successful vaccine?
Gosh, that's a speculation. I don't know if I could ever speculate on that. I don't know, because I don't know about this. Is like, I don't know of any other coronavirus vaccines. So I don't know. I know that they're being tested right now. There are all I can tell you is that right now there are trials with several candidate vaccines that are ongoing, and I really can't say much more.
Because that is a concern if there can ever be one, and what life would be like without that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, you'll have herd. I mean, look, eventually you'll have herd immunity. Eventually that will happen. It's just better if we had it with the vaccine.
So it would just take longer instead of like getting life back to normal in 2021. It might take many years to build up enough herd immunity for life to be fully normal pre-COVID-19. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely think people are going to act differently from this. I don't I don't know exactly. I don't know how long, but for a decent amount of time, I think people are going to treat things very differently.
Yeah. I should have asked you at the outset, Dr. Avi, how much time can I keep you here? I know you're a busy person and you're probably on a different time zone than I am here.
Oh yeah. So it's 9:30.
So let me know if you need.
Yeah, are we? Yeah, sure. We have more questions. We can maybe go like another 5-10 minutes.
Okay, so if you have a question for Dr. Avi, now is the chance. Well, we have him here. So let's see. I saw a couple came out. This is more of a moral question, a philosophical question. Rob Rebellion, I saw, doesn't want to get a vaccine. Do you think Rob Rebellion should be forced to get a vaccine?
Yeah. So I have a view on this. My view is, if they want to, well, really my view is yes. So my view on this is, if there's no medical contraindication, if there's no reason for that individual to not get a vaccine, especially for a pandemic like this, they absolutely, yeah, I think the consequences. So the normative theory I have is called threshold deontology. Roughly speaking, what that means is that there are certain deontic rights violations that you can overstep on someone, whether that's murder, theft, all sorts of things. And then there's the utilitarian part of it. So the utilitarian are the consequences. That's utility, well-being to suffering ratio. At a certain pre-specified threshold for each different deontic rights violation, the consequences may outscale the deontic rights violation. So for example, let's say if an individual did not get a vaccine, then we can show that many, many people would die because of that. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, but let's type theoretically if it is, then I would say in that case the consequences outscale the deontic rights violation of forcing someone else to get pricked with a needle and have a vaccine injected into them. So I think if we have a policy, I do think like on a population health level that would meet the criteria of a threshold deontologist. So on an ethical level, I think it would be actually unethical to not force the individuals to vaccinate.
I know a lot of people would, like I forgot their name again, will have some fears about getting a vaccine.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I think a lot of times fears are based on maybe some false beliefs about vaccines. Is there anything you could say to people who would fear a COVID-19 vaccine to assure them it doesn't have some sinister purpose? It's not, I don't know what they're thinking, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, well, again, first of all, we don't, there's no, do you mean sinister in terms of intent? I don't know anyone who's going to, look, no one was jumping at the gun to make coronavirus vaccines before this. No, people, there's so much red tape that's being cut because we're desperate for a vaccine, not because anyone wants to, there's some conspiracy Illuminati that's going to try to poison us. The other thing is, even then, it's going through enormous amounts of safety tests. That's the reason this thing is going to take a year to develop. If it didn't take a year to develop, maybe then I would be concerned, because I don't know. But even with things that we know are going to be safe, that have been tested so many times, if it's a new vaccine, they'll still put it through phase 2, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials to show safety before they deploy it to the general population. Even if it would make more sense to get it out sooner, they will put it through that type of testing to ensure safety. So, I don't know. I mean, I actually have a anti-vax debate coming up at the end of this month, actually. So if you want to see me go up against anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorists, then you'll see it.
Post that to your Twitter. I want to see that for sure. Matt sent us a super chat tip. Thanks, Matt. And he says, no question, but he wants to say thank you guys for sharing this information and doing your best to quell the absurd misinformation that could lead to more deaths. And this is exactly why I would have Dr. Avi on, because I've seen you respond to a lot of this misinformation, and you're a medical doctor, so I thought you'd be in a really great position here to do what we're trying to do here. So I'm glad Matt thinks we're doing what my intention was.
Let's see.
Maybe that's a good one to end it on. I think we've covered a lot of ground up here.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave this live stream up, like I said, permanently, in case you joined in late, so you can hear everything that we talked about. I think we covered a lot of ground here. I've never seen a Q&A covering COVID-19 with a doctor that covered so much territory we did here. So I think this will be a good resource for people to follow. And I want to encourage people to listen to the data if you're skeptical. The data we presented, if you have questions about that, comment. Just like I said, don't call us names or anything like that. Like I said, the data exists independently of us. So if you have a problem with what we're saying, make your comments regarding the data, your interpretation of it, rather than you don't like my hair or something like that. So you guys were awesome. You guys asked really good questions, and our moderators did a fantastic job of keeping a nice, clean discussion. I didn't see any trolls, and this was awesome. And Dr. Avi, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and answer people's questions in a really thoughtful and just friendly way. This is a great experience.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
We'll be in touch, and maybe we'll have you on again if there's some new issues to talk about for COVID-19,
for sure,
or anything else for that matter. Next time maybe we'll have you on
I'm
on
sure
a more
there
philosophical vegan discussion of some kind.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Also, I want to say we're going to put links in the show notes for a lot of these sources of data. And also, Avi, can you just, before we go, tell people how they can find you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me several areas. So my YouTube is youtube.com/AviMD. We can have that in the description as well. We'll put my Twitter there. I also have a Discord server that can be put there additionally. We'll put the link to the invite there as well. You can find me in either my Discord, which is the Study Archive Discord, or the Ask Yourself Discord. I think people know who Ask Yourself is, but we'll put a link there because I hang out in those two Discords, and my YouTube channel will have all that information there.
All right, so I'm gonna hang out for a little bit and chat with you guys before I go, but we'll send Avi off. Thanks so much, really appreciate it, and we'll be staying in touch.
For sure. Right, Take care. Too. Thanks.
All right, bye. Okay, guys. Let me oops. So let me see. Let me move my frame here. Let me get it more centered. Oh, there we go. Oh, hey guys. So if any little questions you have for me, that was a great discussion. I'm glad Dr. Avi was able to, kind enough to clear his schedule off a little bit and chat with us here. So hopefully you guys, enjoyed this and learned a lot. I learned a lot. I mean, I've been keeping up on this as best as I can as a layperson, and yeah, I wanted to have an expert on and learn even more. Yeah, those bananas are looking good in the background there because, you guys know I've had trouble securing bananas. I was supposed to have an order today of like 35, 40 bananas come by here, and last night they just canceled it on me. It's like, no. So I had oatmeal this morning. No, Jonathan Hendricks will have Dr. Avi on again at some point. Again, you can disagree with people. That's fine. And if you want to disagree with someone, again, just leave your comment in a rational way. What about the data don't you like? What about the argument don't you like? Rather than, I just don't like that person, or I don't like Ryan's hair, I'm not going to believe him. Again, as I keep saying, the data exists independently of us. Ryan, what is the color that you eat bananas at? Lately I've been eating them at this kind of yellow color. It's been cold here. They're not ripening, but yeah, I don't like green bananas. Obviously I like them with at least some brown spots on them, if not lots of brown spots, but not to the point where they're like rotted on the inside. It's kind of a fine line, where the perfect banana, what its color and texture is. No, not green, cold poison. Far from green. No, green bananas are hard. They haven't fully ripened yet. No, you want them at least to be yellow and with some spots. And I like them decently spotted, That's a fine line. If you get them too spotted, then they can start going bad. But I've been doing this for so long, I know what, a good ripe banana looks like. Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, Dr. Avi is vegan. I'm not sure for how long or anything, but yeah, maybe we'll ask him that next time. But he's definitely a vegan. Fetish Walker. Well, if you don't want your UBI, if you think it's dumb, you can donate it to a number of charitable causes. I've donated money to Sail Ranch Sanctuary several times. In fact, I've donated some of my unused campaign funds to Sail Ranch Sanctuary. So if you are in a position where a stimulus check to you is not helping, take that $1,200 and donate it to a food bank, donate it to a charity, donate it to groups that are helping people that are suffering from COVID-19. But you know how entitled you are to sit here and complain about receiving free money from the government? If you don't need it, great. Donate it to a charity. Don't just sit here like an entitled person and say it's dumb. You know, a lot of people would love to have that $1,200 right now. People who can't pay their rent, pay their bills, give it to people in need. Give it to animals in need. But don't give me your entitled nonsense here. Yeah, Dr. Avi's on the East Coast. I'm not exactly sure where on the East Coast. I don't really know Dr. Avi all that much. I've chatted with him a few times, both in text and voice audio, but I've never really gotten to know him too well, but I hope to know more. Wujeta, you would like, if you start a charity group, Wujeta, I guess you can get some donations sent to your way. I see a lot of people here would love to have a stimulus check donated to them. Hopefully you guys are getting a stimulus check, and if you want an additional one, our friend who I forgot their name already will donate it to you since he's already doing so well. I'm happy for you. If you're doing so well financially that the economic stimulus check is just something you can laugh at and be all blasé about, you're in a lucky, privileged position. So many people are hurting right now. It just offends me. Yes, plant power. I love plantains. I haven't had plantains for a while, but yeah, we make a dish and keep it carb, baby. Angie's book here, which I think we're down to 12 copies of the hard cover book here. And I'm not sure when we're going to get them printed up now with all the craziness of the world going on. But we have the ebook on sale this whole duration of the pandemic. It might be for a long time, according to Dr. Avi, until life gets back to normal. So we're going to keep it half price, $6.50, and it's at our web store. And let me put a link to our store here. Put down in the show notes for y'all. There we go. 50% off the digital ebook of Keep It Carb, baby. We're going to keep it that way for the duration. $6.50. Okay. Yeah, maybe I was being a little ad hominem with that when I call that person entitled, but that's how I feel. If you are just being all flippant and blasé with a $1,200 check, no strings attached, coming your way, well, you're in a privileged position. I'm just stating the truth. If that doesn't excite you, help you to pay bills, then you're doing great. Donate the money. Seriously. Instead of complaining about it, donate to... There's tons of people in need right now. Comment on David Ick. I don't know who David Ick is, so I'm not going to comment on that because I have no idea who you're talking about. I would ad hominem him. I don't make ad hominem arguments. As I said, that's not how we roll here on Happy Healthy Vegan. We're all about rational discourse. We don't like ad hominem attack people, which means we attack their arguments, we attack their words, their positions. We don't attack like what race they are, how old they are, how they look, what shirt they wear, how big their muscles are, anything like that. We look at what they say. I said I just did. No, I don't know who David Ick is. Maybe I quoted him from someone earlier, but I don't know who David Ick is. A live concert for me and Angie. I just kind of figured out more how to do that. I've been playing around with the software here more, and I think I know how to like stream audio from like my Logic Pro, and then we could jam on top of that. So maybe so. We just need to start practicing, I guess. Kathleen, your 3-year-old loves Angie's cookbook because your 3-year-old hates onions. Well, yeah, we're not big fans of onions. And if you need to have onions, you could always put them in the recipes. We just don't include them in there. But yeah, if you really have to, we're not going to like jump out of the invisible air and like say, hey, bad person or anything like that. Let's see. No banana shortage in Australia. Well, I don't know if there's a banana shortage here. I'm just telling you, I'm having trouble getting them. Like, you know, Sometimes they're out when I place an order. They just bring me like 2 bananas. Yeah, one time they brought me 2 bananas, you know, so my banana flow is definitely disrupted right now. Okay, well, that guy says COVID-19 does not exist. JAP. Well, if that guy, whoever his name is, Ick or Ake, thinks COVID-19 does not exist, then I'd love to see his explanation of let's see, several graphs. Like this one here, which we looked at earlier. Let me pop it up here. This graph here, which shows weekly deaths in New York State over the flu seasons going back to 2015. And the vertical red line are COVID-19 deaths. And look at all the lines on the bottom of the screen. Those are where flu deaths are. The gray line, the gray horizontal line, are total weekly deaths. Nothing can explain this red line of COVID-19 deaths. Like, what would David Ick say to that? I know you're not David Ick or Ake or whatever his name is. How would he explain that red line? Just tell me, guys. How would David explain that red line, that mysterious sudden jump in deaths from this thing that didn't even exist, overtaking all flus from the past 5 years by like, what, 5-10 times, and far surpassing the average amount of deaths? So you can make a graph too, but is it based on data? Anyone can make a graph. Let's see where I have the data source for this is. This data is based upon data from the National Center for Health Statistics Mortality Surveillance System and Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center. So how can you explain? So what are you saying, Vegan Marshall? That you'll... Okay, Vegan Marshall, who cares if there's a test? What, just say we don't even know what's causing all these deaths on the red line. Let's say we don't know, okay? Well, we know where flus normally are. That's the green, yellow, and purple lines down at the bottom. What explains this red line here? There's nothing. Please tell me if you have an idea. So the only thing you can do is say the data. Be skeptical of the data, but then you have to give me a reason why all of a sudden this year it's completely weird and all other years it's not. So please tell me. So please, if you can give me a rational explanation, not some just crazy thing like, oh, it's 5G or it's chemtrails or whatever, a rational explanation that makes logical sense, I will listen to it and consider it. Until then, there's no way to debunk COVID-19's reality because nothing will explain why so many people are dying right now. Again, look at it again right now. Let's look at it one more time if you don't believe me. What is happening here? Why does that red line exist when you see how many deaths are from all other flus down there at the bottom? Those green lines, the purple lines. What is happening? Anyway, ventilator deaths. Like people who need to be ventilated are... I mean, the people die on ventilators. I mean, people are ventilated every year with flu deaths. So it's not like ventilators themselves cause death. People who are near death need to be ventilated. So I'm not sure if that's any kind of explanation, Race Liver. Why would the people this year all of a sudden be dying for ventilators deaths? And let's say ventilator deaths were the cause. How come so many people are dying, though, is the thing. Look at that red line. Why are so many people being put on ventilators that would kill them? So anyway, let's see. If I ran out of toilet paper, would I trade bananas for it? Good question, Cold Poison. I don't have a lot of bananas to use as currency, so unfortunately, I don't think I could get much TP. So, okay, mangoes as a weapon. Let's say COVID deaths are being misreported. Let's say terminally ill patients, for any reason that you're saying, are counted as COVID. Or okay, let's just say that. Okay, so then again, why is this happening? Can you explain to me why all of a sudden there's this giant jump in deaths? And also too, let's look at this one right here, deaths in New York City by month. On the left side, there's a spike in deaths on September 11th, 2001. And if you go all the way to the right side, the most extreme spike of all time is right here, month ending April 4th. Why? The thing is, okay, so let's say the doctors are dumb or trying to make some money and mislabeling people's deaths. Why are so many people dying right now? Because that gray dotted line, the dotted line is expected deaths, what's normal for this time of year. So why is the actual deaths, the observed deaths, like maybe 8 times higher than where they should be? Please explain. Let's say the doctors are misdiagnosing. Why are so many people dying? Why are so many people dying? Answer me that. Why are so many people dying? I'm not seeing an answer. Why so many people are dying? Okay, yeah, right, sir. Maybe the vents are a partial reason for the spike, but why, again, why is this happening right now on the right side of the graph? Why are so many people dying? The observed deaths are way higher than the expected deaths right now. Isn't it just a strange coincidence that so many people are dying right now? I mean, why is that? Please tell me. And let's look at the source of data for this again. I believe it's the Center for Disease Control. Let me take a look. Yes, using CDC data through April 10th. Again, the reputable source of information. Oh, okay. So people are making, okay, that's what you're saying. So they're making up the number here. Okay, so you're just not trusting the information. It's like the flat earthers. If NASA takes a picture, or if China takes a picture of the Earth, or Russia takes a picture of the Earth, we're just saying they're lying. You can't trust it. So again, if you want to have that extreme skepticism, just read Rene Descartes. He's a philosopher, and he was able to use skepticism in such an extreme way. He was able to doubt away that the existence of any world external to his mind. Just his thoughts exist. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So yeah, if you want to be that skeptical and just distrust everything, go right ahead. But there's no reason to doubt these numbers. You're saying that they're just making these numbers up, pulling them out of their butt. Our government, John Hopkins, are pulling these numbers out of their butts, saying people are dying and this is not true. I feel sorry for you if that's what you think, because that's extremely skeptical and it's not that rational. Yeah, concerned mom. That's why I did this live stream, to have a doctor come on, go through the data, explain it in a very simple, easy to understand way to show what's really happening, because I don't know why people are divided about this. This is really happening. I mean, this is real. I mean, here it is. Why are the deaths so high right now? Why did this is let's see, let me scroll down so you can see what's going on. These are deaths in New York City by month. It's getting chopped off at the top of the browser. That's what the header says, deaths in New York City by month. And why is that happening right now? There's no rational explanation. All the haters can do, or skeptics can do, is doubt the validity of the data. I'm not a big fan of Rene Descartes either. I'm just just using Descartes as an example of where extreme skepticism leads to. And anyone who studied Descartes knows that Descartes wasn't being very sincere in his skepticism. He was just producing an argument, but I don't think he sincerely believed the external world did not exist. So what? I'm not making stuff up. If anyone's making stuff up, are you saying that this data is made up? It's fabricated? If so, prove it. Show me that this is wrong. Again, if you want to dispute this data and say it's wrong, you need some strong evidence here. So you're saying people are not dying in an irregular way right now in New York City. Life is normal there. The hospitals are filled normally. The ICUs are filled to normal capacities. Again, you're the one making an extreme claim, and anyone knows anything about science, extreme claims demand extreme evidence. They can claim it's Agenda 2020 or whatever, but again, we need some extreme evidence. The most rational explanation for this is that COVID-19 is really happening in New York City. Okay, guys. Dr. Avi has no credentials. Well, he's actually a medical doctor. Sverige, and how's it doing? Hey, want me to play some Love Spiral songs for you, bro? Let's see. I don't know if I know that one off the top of my head that you showed in your vlog there, but I got the guitar that I recorded it on right here. erase life. I'm not saying don't question things. I mean, obviously, I question things. That's why I'm vegan. You know, we're all raised being told that you need to drink your milk to be strong. You got to eat your meat for all this and your butter and all this nonsense. And yeah, obviously, that's completely wrong. As you know, as we all know, except for Sverger, that you can be vegan short term, long term, and not only survive but thrive health wise. I have the best blood tests I've ever had now, the best fitness I've ever had, the best health, and I'm 52 freaking years old. So yeah, I question authority. Look at me, I'm not like a basic dude here. I'm a pretty odd person. I just don't fit in with most people in society all that well. So don't try to paint me as someone who doesn't question things. All right, so let's see if you have any good questions here. Real questions here. Um, I guess we could have had Dr. Avi give his full credentials. I don't know why people are questioning him. He is an actual medical doctor, but I said, let's say Dr. Avi is not a doctor. Let's say he doesn't even exist on this planet. He was never born. That data that we were talking about exists independently of him. So don't do ad hominem attacks against him or me. As I said 10 times, the data has nothing to do with us. We're just talking about it. So if you want to try to take a shot at us, who cares? The data has nothing to do with us. Did I say I was going to play some tunes on the guitar? No, not right now. Not right now. No, Sverge, that's totally not right. If you watch my videos, I've lived with Angie since 2000, and she's been a vegetarian since the 1980s. So since her and I moved in together in 2000, as the saying goes, if your girlfriend's a vegetarian, that pretty much makes you a vegetarian as well. So I was eating vegetarian since 2000, went vegan in 2010. So that's pretty much 20 years now of, meat-free eating. So, people like to say you stored all that crap up. No, I mean, it'd be long gone. How long does meat stay in your body? Really? How long do nutrients from meat stay in your body? 20 years? I don't think so. So there goes that theory. It's a good one. I'm glad you raised it up there, Sverge, but that's completely untrue. Vegetarian 10 years, vegan 9.5 years. Was it fake, Sverge? Okay, whichever, I don't like fake impersonating going on or anything like that. So I might block you just out of principle. I don't like people impersonating people here. Did I see Dr. Avi's credentials? No, he didn't. I didn't ask to see his credentials before I had him on. But like I said, let's say he's not a doctor. Let's just do a thought experiment here. I have every reason to believe he's a credentialed medical doctor, works in the field. He's Dr. Avi. But let's say he's not. So what? I told you that data that we were showing here was supplied by, like, say, the Centers for Disease Control, Johns Hopkins University. It's just us interpreting what the data says. There's not much to interpret. If you see a chart like this, and this is the, again, you can't see the full thing right now. Maybe I can make it smaller. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Let me size it down a little bit. There we go. Deaths per day in New York City. Why else is it so high right now? The only other big spike was back in September 2001, September 11th. Why is there a spike right now? Again, we're just discussing that. We didn't make this data up. Okay, I see more ad hominem attacks against Dr. Avi. So just drop it, You can say whatever you want. You could say you don't like my hair, you don't like my shirt. None of these ad hominem attacks affect any of the data that exists out there independently of us. Let's see. You like my hair and shirt? Cool. I'm just saying. I'm just showing examples of odd ad hominem attacks where people attack something about you. More often than not, they won't attack my hair or shirt, but people have. Someone, I'm not going to mention their name, made a whole hater video about how going vegan. I'm age 52. Look at this hair. People are saying that going vegan has made my hair fall out and my eyebrows fall out. So yeah, people have attacked my hair before. It's like, meat eaters, are known to like not ever lose hair. I mean, it's just crazy talk. Yeah, happy days. Yeah, data from the CDC is a reputable source rather than some like, some guy you went to high school with who makes posts on Facebook saying they see through the lies of the media. Okay, Race, I'm glad you at least think my hair looks all right today. Jethro Hendricks, yeah, I'd love to see your charts of how meat eaters live longer. We're not talking people that just eat a little bit of meat, like the Okinawans of Japan, the centenarians who have 3% of their calories from meat. Yeah, show me the charts that, like, yeah, people who eat a preponderance of meat, like a really meat-heavy diet, live longer than, say, the Okinawans of Japan or the vegans or vegetarians of the Seventh-day Adventists. Show me a chart. I would love to see that, please. And then again, once you, of course, for a chart to be valid, please show the sources of the data. I will check that out. Clyde says the CDC's data is only good as the countries that give them. Well, in this case, the only country at hand here is the United States of America. And I don't see why all of a sudden in April of 2020, the doctors and people who tabulate deaths in the United States of America would all have brain farts and jack it up by like 5 times. Basically lying. I need an explanation for why that's happening. When you're malnourished, you're weak-minded and they can mind control. Well, good thing I'm not malnourished. I probably eat more calories than Sfarage has ever eaten in his entire life. I mean, I'm talking on any single day. And also, I put my blood tests up, so I love it when people like to say I'm malnourished. When I put all my blood tests up, put them up pretty much every year since I've had a YouTube channel for 7 years, and there is no deficiencies. So, interesting how I'm the one who's malnourished. What are you trying to say, good guy? Let's see. Ryan, the first vegan was Donald Watson. He came up with the term vegan. He became vegetarian at age 14, vegan in his 30s, and lived to 95 years old vegan the entire time. Yeah, I'm not shocked at that one bit, I'm going to live the rest of my days vegan too. Bill Gates controls the CDC. Really? So he can just go in there and just tell them what numbers to write down? Again, show me evidence that these numbers are doctored in some way. Again, you got to show me. You just can't say that. I could say, look, the Martians that live on planet Zbox 7 are actually the masters of the CDC, and they control the numbers, and they manipulate all the numbers. Well, okay, show me the evidence. I would tell it to myself, if I made such a outrageous claim like that. Let's see. Do I know which area Dr. Avi specialized in? This is completely out of curiosity, by the way. I'm not exactly sure. I said we didn't have a long time to chat. We came on, we connected about 10 minutes before we went live, and we were pretty much doing, troubleshooting some minor technical issues we were having. So we didn't get a long time to get to know each other as I was kind of hoping. So, yeah, don't know. Evidence is not needed. The evidence shows veganism is malnourishment. Oh, show the evidence. Show the evidence that vegan is malnourishment. Evidence does not need to exist on this planet. You're a comedian, right? This is like a comedian impersonating him, right? Because that is just... You're funny. Maybe I should make a troll account for him, too. All right, guys. So I've been on 2 hours. This is a long time. So I'm going to get going. I want to thank Race Lover. I know Tracy was on earlier, and she split. But thanks everyone. If you want to check out any of the sources of data, I will. I already have some of the websites and graphs that Dr. Avi and I looked at here, so I'll put those up, and hopefully he'll send me the rest over time. So I'm going to put some in the next few minutes if you guys would like to explore this fake data that Bill Gates made the CDC manipulate and all that stuff. You can check that out. I'm just joking. I don't believe any of that, but I'll put it down there, and yeah. Comment, and again, if you're going to disagree, keep it rational. Just don't make stuff up. Don't make ad hominem attacks, or else we'll just delete it. All right, guys. So thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. And I am ready to eat some hardcore vegan food. Yeah, full of carbs, full of vegetables. It's going to be awesome. So, all right, guys. Look for a new vlog from Angie tomorrow. It's another day of how we ate as vegans at home and staying healthy and all that stuff. So take a look for that. It should be out tomorrow. All right, guys. Best of luck, and let's keep it vegan. You too, Sparge.